Welcome to the church. Thank you for being here. We are enormously privileged to have two of the artists in our show who in alphabetical order, or why do we do reverse alphabetical order? Lucy Winton and Christa Maiwald are with us today. Two artists, yay! Two of the 46 artists who are in this exhibition, Threading the Needle, which sort of looks at the wonderful things that happen when the conceptual approaches of contemporary art meet the expertise and skill of sort of craft practitioners. So, you know, I was asked the other day how I judge artist versus craft person, and I said, I don't have to. It's up to the artist to decide what they do. We're very lucky to be in this period where so many different types of expressions are in the contemporary art arena, and I think that is just something that this show shows, and we're just very grateful to have artists such as Lucy and Christa to talk to us about that today. I'd like to recognize my co-curator, Eric Fischel, who is here in the audience. And we have a number of events going on around the show. So please look at our website and come back often. This is really a very intimate event where we really will see through the eyes of the artist as they sort of talk about their piece. So I'm really going to be in the background. I have a couple of questions. The format is that the artist talk for about 20 minutes and then we take questions from the audience. So please know that we need your input, we want your input, and so we'll go for about 20 minutes with one artist and then 20 minutes with the other. And so that is what we're going to do today. We asked Lucy and Christa who wanted to go first, and Christa was quicker on the draw. So Christa, welcome to the church. Thank you for being part of this exhibition, and thank you for being here today. And I would like to talk to you about, or I would like you to talk to us about this wonderful piece in front of us, musical chairs in G minor. And I would like for you to start to talk about how you came up with this piece and what was really kind of the impetus for it. Yeah, that would be great.
Musical chairs, all right. Oh, sorry. Is this working? You can hear me? Is that okay? All right. So musical chairs, I had already been collecting little kids' chairs because I had two little children. And it was 2008, and the big recession hit. And it was extremely upsetting for everybody in the country and affected the world. And I just decided to do some research and see how this all came about. So I talked to my husband, who's Mark Siegel, and he reads a lot of left-wing websites. and you know, it sort of knows much more, it can put it into words what's going on. So he gave me some names of people and told me about them. And so I came up with these, actually 12 people. There's 13 chairs, but there's 12 people because I put Bernie Madoff in twice because I thought he was pretty big in the news and had done really, really bad things. So you have a whole range of politicians and really big economists that are on the chairs. After I got the idea, I thought, I wasn't painting, I was doing embroidery, so I thought I would do these chair pads. And I work with a tailor named Kate Mund, and she helps me whenever I do an installation or something with cloth. She's amazing. So she put the chair pads together, and I embroidered each face on it. So we have people like, Bernie, and Greenspan, Alan Greenspan, I don't know if you want me to like point to the chairs and say who they, okay, well, I have a cheat sheet because this was 13 years ago. So I have to look at pictures. Anyway, let's see. This is,
Tilt it even.
yeah. Which one? Oh, the microphone?
The cushion.
Oh, the cushion. Okay, this is Bernanke. And does anybody know who he is? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Ben Bernanke. He followed Greenspan as the chair of the Federal Reserve in 2006. Okay, then there's, this is Summers. Let's see what he did. I forgot what he did. This is going to take too long if I do this.
Where are you at?
I'm with this guy, Summers. Is that Summers? Or is that Geithner? I'm confused already.
It says Summers on the back.
Okay, so that's Summers. Anyway, the next guy is Rubin. He's Secretary of the Treasury under Clinton. All right. Next is, I think that might be, let's see, forget who that is. Do you know who that is? No, I forget. Anyway, it's taking too long, so we'll just you'll have to look at them, and I'll leave my cheat sheet here, but yeah. So it took quite a while to do this piece. The embroidery, it looks simple. It looks like, oh, she must have done that in maybe 2 or 3 days, but if it's only me doing it by hand, so every time that I have to change the thread, which is usually about this long, and get another piece, and sometimes, depending on how big the piece is that I'm working on, an embroidery thread has 6 little strands wound together. And if you're working very fine, you do it with 1 or 2, and if you're getting bigger, then you use the entire thing. But usually I have to split it. So there's a whole process of just getting the thread, splitting it into 2s or 3s, and then threading the needle, and it all takes like, a little under a minute. So, and then when you sew, you stitch by hand, you can do about maybe a ½ an inch. And then you have to change again. So it's really a big process where you can work on something that's like this big, and it could take you like 4 hours. It's just incredible. Question?
Oh, afterwards, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I don't mind.
I was just gonna say, do you put an image down?
Oh, okay, so the process of getting it onto the fabric, usually I use white because then I can just do a line drawing, and I put that underneath the fabric, and then I draw the outline onto the fabric. So that's the easiest way. But when it gets into color, then I have to do something that's really old school, where you buy this paper. I usually go to SAG Variety to get all my supplies, and they have this old stuff, this paper that has color on it, and you can put the color on top of the piece of colored fabric and then press down and get sort of a basic outline to go through onto the fabric. It's not the best, but it's like the only thing that I've come up with. So anyway.
Christa,
Yes.
I'd like you to talk about the noses.
About what?
The noses. Each of your portrait, the noses they're colored and they're very prominent. Was there
Oh.
thinking behind that?
Oh, well, noses. Well, I don't know. I hate doing noses. It's really hard. Noses and ears are really hard. But I always start with the eyes because then the piece just like comes to life immediately. I just love doing eyes. And lips are really fun because you can gradate all the colors, and it's beautiful. So I really like doing portraits. I've been doing many portraits for many years. I've actually been doing embroidery for about a little over 20 years. And I've discovered it, if you go on a road trip or you go on a long airplane ride, you have the best thing to do. It just keeps you busy. You don't annoy the driver or anything. You don't care, if it's boring to drive, it doesn't matter. So I embroidered 11 hours all the way to Jordan and back and got a piece done, and that was great. Yes, I highly recommend it. Let's see, what else?
The other thing I'm interested in is the color of the chairs.
Oh, the colors. Well, I was thinking, I mean, this was such a devastating thing, this recession. It was just so huge, and so many people, especially with Bernie Madoff, they lost their houses. They were out on the street. It was just awful. You know, when the bubble burst, they had no money and they were stuck. And I think a lot of people, there must be people here, myself included, who know someone who lost like a few $1 million because of him. So anyway, I got sidetracked. The colors of it. So I decided, since they were little children chairs, that I would color them in playful colors. And then the whole thing with musical chairs, I've done a lot of pieces that are about terrible things in the world. Like I did, before I started doing embroidery, I was doing painting. And I did a whole series of terrorist paintings, big ones, like 6x6, 8x8. And they were all based on games like Candyland. Like Candyland was big painting, and I used to play it when I was a kid. And on the painting was an image of a little kid and his sister, and they were on a road that wound on the surface of the painting past the snipers and the bombs and the devastation and stuff, just to get to the little bakery that was up where they could buy a loaf of bread and stand in line. So, and I did checkers and pickup sticks and all kinds of paintings that it was really horrific imagery, but I kind of like smoothed it a little bit because I had these kind of children's games that they were based on.
A number of people have, when they've seen this work, they've asked about the fact that this implies that we sit on the faces of these individuals. And there's obviously an enormous amount of gravitas and humor in this work. When you were thinking about musical chairs, I mean, did you think about this sort of disrespectful aspect towards the individuals involved, or was it more just a way of representing them I a way that sort of underlined their role in this terrible financial crisis?
I think that if you were to sit on their faces, that's pretty disrespectful, and I think that's appropriate. So I think, as Mary Heilman did at the opening, she sat on the chairs. But anyway.
We let Mayuri do that, but nobody else.
It's okay.
I'm also interested in the fact that you depicted Bernie Madoff twice, and once you have a kind of portrait shot of him, and then you have him in the baseball hat as though he's sort of slinking away. He seems to be the kind of narrative thread through the whole piece. Was that what you were thinking?
I think that what I was thinking was he was the one that was so prominent in the news, and that I could talk about him. There was like a personal thing, because everybody saw him on the news almost every night, and also trying to get pictures of him. There were always the two that they were showing, and that was one of them. Him in the baseball hat with the coat up, and somebody says something or grabs his arm when he's going into the courtroom, and he kind of like pushes them away, and so that's why. Both things.
I guess the other larger aspect about this work, and then your work in general that I'm interested in, has to do with your more recent work to do with baking and cakes, which you do extraordinarily well, and the church thanks you again for your generosity. But there is an idea of kind of conviviality and a sort of social aspect to your work. Can you talk about kind of doing this work and then moving on to your more recent work with photography and cakes?
I think I'm trying to remember. See, the thing with doing social pieces is I don't do it continuously. I do a series, and then usually something else in my life becomes important, like, my kids getting older, or my kids being born, or something else that I love that's happening, or something else that I hate. So I keep coming back to social things, but I don't necessarily have a train of, one social thing after another. Because I think what came after this, because I'm trying to remember what came before I started getting involved with cakes. And I think what happened was I might have run out of material, and I looked around to see what else in my life do I love. My kids had grown. I'd done working with them as teenagers, doing video pieces and installations with this group of teenagers and lots of embroideries of them. I think it was baking, because I always baked. And then I got this job with a really prominent family out here, also art collectors, and I just bake in the summer just for them, every single day till Labor Day, and then it's over. So the cakes suddenly became part of my work. And I made embroideries of them and a lot of photographs of cakes that I would make to look like something in the landscape. I'd follow the seasons, like a mushroom cake, and it looked just like a mushroom. And then I'd put it into the landscape with other mushrooms and photograph it and make it big. So.
And you've done it also with the cycles of the moon and many other kind of natural and unexpected places. And in your photography, there's also a kind of confusion between a cake and the object it's representing.
Yeah, there's a trompe-l'oeil thing going on with the cakes and the photograph, because often the cakes look like what I'm photographing. So there was a blue moon that was, I don't know, like a few years ago. I don't know if anybody saw it, but I thought, wow, a blue moon that hasn't been here in a long time. I'm going to photograph that. I'm going to do a cake. I found a cake actual recipe for a blue moon cake, and it's a chocolate cake, and it has iridescent edible dust in different colors that you smear on the top of the cake. So it really looks like a blue moon. So anyway, so the moon's coming along, and I'm waiting up, and I'm in my pajamas, and unfortunately all the trees around my house had grown up, and there was only one little spot around my house where I could see the blue moon. I had to wait till, like, I don't know, midnight or something. All of a sudden it's there, so I drug a big ladder outside on our deck, and Mark, my husband, was helping me. He was going to shoot it, because I had to hold up this cake against like some kind of black background so it blended in. And somehow the moon got right there, and we got the shot. And so in the photograph, it's got the actual cake, the blue moon cake, and then right above it is the real moon, and it's really great. I was so happy. I couldn't believe it.
You've returned to embroidery quite recently,
yeah.
And you've been working with a lot of luxury goods and the representation of luxury goods. Could you talk a little bit about that more recent series?
Wait, tell me which, I'm sorry.
The embroideries that you've done of kind of luxury goods.
Okay. So I've been recently doing a series on the earth. Like I stayed away from that subject matter, what's happening with the earth, for a long time, because everybody was doing it. And then I just couldn't stand it. I had to do it. So I started with the octopus, how sad that is. And I think everybody's seen my Octopus Teacher, such a great movie. And anyway, so I embroidered this big piece, like for embroidery, big, 30 by 30, hand done, of course, and it was all these little octopuses, and they were all doing things. And I found out from the Beatles song that octopuses really are attracted to bling. They really like shiny things, and they build these little houses out of them because it protects them, and they can hide inside, and they really like it. So all these little octopuses are doing stuff with diamonds and rings and purses, and they have Louis Vuitton on them and all these different brand names sewn into them, and it was really fun to do. But it was serious. It was all about these amazing commodities that are, basically when they're done with them, they're done, and they get, sifted off, and whatever happens to them happens. But anyway, so I started with the octopus and went on to the white rhino and other things like that.
So you had a burning question in the front. Let's kick off the audience questions.
Well, I think I already asked it, but
That's all
I think
right.
I already asked it, but they're lovely. But
Thank you.
you were talking about the process of getting some sort of outline on it before you started sewing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Christa, this is wonderful. The whole syncopation of the chairs, you know, the title. Does the title come to you in the beginning? I know when I'm doing an artwork, it comes in sometimes in the middle. It's serendipitous. It's different for every artist. But I'm curious because as I think of your title, you know, which I'm trying to think, it's something in the chairs in G minor. There's sort of a syncopation. It seems of the chairs. You know, they're going up and down. Is that my imagination at work, or is there any of that, or is there a piece of music you were thinking of, or why the title?
Oh, well, the title, Musical Chairs, it's the game. It's the game. And every time this piece is shown, I just leave it up to the curators to place them however they want. So in this respect, I see that it goes up and down almost like keys. Yeah. So that's, yeah, I like structure. So anyway. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it's wonderful. It's more comment than a question. Sorry. It's more a comment probably than a question. I think it's wonderful that you use children's titles because with the destructive things of us adults, which in a way is telling children what world we are living them and all,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's so deeply connected. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I agree with you. I mean, the children are the next group, the next generation, and I actually just started this series called Big Babies because they're like that. They are the next generation, and the series is going to be all about how these big babies are rebuilding, showing them rebuilding like the Ukraine. So that'll be the next, and those are embroidery pieces. Yeah. So thank you.
Because they look fun, but it's really
But they're not. No, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Christa, about, I'm over here, hi.
Who's talking? Oh, I'm sorry.
Where's that voice?
Hello.
I wanted to ask you about, because of course this show highlights a lot of classically female-associated art activities, like embroidery, like weaving, like tapestry, like things that people associate with women's work, women's art,
Right.
crafts, et cetera, et cetera. So I sort of think of your work as like, you're like the Madame Defarge, if I'm remembering
Yes,
your
of
name
course.
correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do
like,
too.
Like you're embedding really intelligent, insidious political content into your work.
Yeah.
And to have you doing that as a kind of a feminist statement, I think is really powerful. And I was first alerted to your work through embroidery. I didn't know about your history as a painter, for which I apologize, but I've been really loving watching it grow, and this is kind of a highlight. I was wondering if the size of the chairs and the size of the pillows relate to the portraits at all. Is there some connection, like a smaller chair gets a different kind of person on it?
Yeah. Actually, no. It was just what I could get. I mean, some of these chairs a lot of them are brand new, you know, for little kids you can order. But 2 or 3 of them are really, really old, just really old chairs that I picked up, you know, because I don't know, a lot of people like chairs. There's lots of chair pieces that are going on, so yeah.
What do you think about the feminist content, or do you think about that as like a...
No, I think that
Curious.
that definitely was a big influence. I mean, when I started out doing, I got into embroidery because I thought I was going to have a show in Italy. I was showing with Florence Lynch, a dealer in New York, and she said, "You're going to have a show in Italy." I thought, "Oh, great! I've got 6-foot paintings. What, you know, I have no money. What am I going to do with shipping and stuff?" So I thought, well, I knew that embroidery was going on then, and it had this whole feminist bent, and a lot of the work was being done was very feminist, and I thought, well, you know, okay, maybe I know how to sort of embroidery. I know 3 stitches and that's it. And I'm going to do that. So that's what got me into it, actually. But yes, I'm aware that there is this big feminist thing that goes on. And actually a lot of the embroideries I did at first, a lot of them were kind of sexual, to tell you the truth, sexual energy and stuff like that. So.
I want to see those too.
Oh. Anyway. Yes. You have to hold it. I think you turned it off.
I haven't seen your piece on terrorism, but I was wondering, is it your use of politics, is it a narrative for you? How do you, if you could elaborate further on the interface between politics and aesthetics, is it through a critical perspective that you always develop these pieces?
Let me see if I understand. You want to know if I'm going to do more
if
political?
or you could, if you could elaborate further, why is it politics that
That interests me?
Yeah, yes.
Well, just in general, I mean, I don't read every word of the newspaper or watch the news, religiously, have CNN on 24 hours or anything like that, because it's too upsetting. So I just have more of a general feeling, not really ranting and raging or anything like that. You have to go on. You just have to, hope that things will get better. Hope is a big thing you have to have. So I don't know, I'm doing big babies that are trying to restructure, the Ukraine. So it's come up again. So here we go. So that's sort of, it's like, it starts usually like with a feeling, usually you have something in reality and then the feeling comes. That's what it is, yeah. Okay, is that good?
This will be the last question.
Okay, let's see if I can hear you.
Hi, from what I can see on this side, it's all men, and I was wondering if the other side is all men as well.
Wait.
Depicted.
Can you take your mask down
sure.
for a minute? 'Cause
I can see men on this side, and I was
Yes.
wondering if the other side is all men,
Yeah,
too.
they're all men.
Are they all white men?
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Are they all white men?
Yes, they are.
That's my last question.
It just happened. I don't know.
We're going to just do one more question real quick.
Hey, Christa.
Hi.
I actually know you first as a baker. You made some wonderful birthday cakes for me.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering about the interplay between your baking and your art. And just to say, I've been just finishing a book on Abaddon, a biography.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting because he, of course, was known as a fashion photographer, but he really wanted to be known as a portrait artist, among other things. And I don't want to know you just as a baker, I want to know you as an artist.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if you, and I do, but I want to know something, if you could share something about the interplay of those two activities in your life.
Oh, the baking and the portraiture?
Baking and your art.
Oh, baking and...
Both making.
Oh, just making things, yeah. Yeah, well, that's pretty much what artists do, is they like to be busy and making things. Making is really important, yeah. I'm not sure how to answer that exactly.
Are the activities exclusive, or do you find there's an overlap when you're baking that you're thinking of art, or when you're art that you're baking? Is there any interplay?
Yeah, well, especially when I was doing the landscape photographs, then I was thinking about, baking and art all the time. And actually now I'm doing pieces there with cookies. So yeah, actually, that's true. I'm doing pieces with cookies now, and I throw the cookies into the bathtub. I make all these cookies, they have a theme to them, and then I decorate them and everything, and then I throw them into the bathtub, and I photograph them, because they dissolve into, and they kind of loop-de-loop and do things, and there's flowers and things, and they're really great. It's intense. The whole thing's just like a performance. It's over in 5 minutes, because everything goes down the drain then. But I get the shot. So thank you for that question.
Christa, thank you so, so much.
Okay, thank you.
So Lucy, thank you for, we're going to do the same thing. 20 minutes, we'll start the stopwatch. Obviously there's a kind of charming crossover, which is the fact that there are moons in Christa's work, and there is obviously a moon in your beautiful tapestry called Rabbit Moon. And I guess my first question just to you would be about your process and the way that you are using a found tapestry, and the way kind of what you do to that tapestry could be seen as destructive, certainly the cutting out of the rabbit. But I'm interested in the way you look at these objects and think about their future. And we're going to ask you to stand.
Yeah, okay. First, it's humiliating to come after Christa because she's really pure in her process. She's part of every step of, you're part of every step of your process, and I actually do
Lucy,
I do a graphic for computer program for mine, and so full disclosure, and also I own an incredible Shaw of Iran cushion that I have not yet sat on, but I'm looking forward to it. And I've owned it for years, and every time I walk into my room, I'm like, the Shah, I'm sitting on him. I don't know when, but so yeah. Okay, so that's. I've been painting and embroidering on tapestries for a while, and I'm driven sometimes by what the tapestry kind of says to me right away. I have to find a tapestry that's usually like a little bit ratty, that has no future, because I would feel too guilty if I was doing something with something that really existed in itself strongly. So this one looked luminous to me, and I really had like a religious kind of feeling from it, and I am like a religious nut myself without particular religion at all. And where's the best place to stand? I have no idea. No, that's not right either. Okay. But so and painting and visual stuff is so great for frustrated religious feelings, because I don't know why. What's the explanation? But I feel that it is, and so I do animals a lot of the time when I'm painting, and then in my tapestries sometimes I do animals too. And the rabbit, well, I'll just start with the rabbit. The rabbit is a creature I read in Wikipedia that leaves its body really easily. Like if you have a domesticated rabbit and a dog surprises it suddenly, they'll go into cardiac arrest before the dog even gets close to them. So you have to be really careful about that. And so I just thought the rabbit was so ephemeral, and I like the idea of going after the tapestry, maybe with a bit of destruction, a bit of cutout. I don't want to necessarily get too hung up on the literal elements, but even when you're doing literal stuff, you kind of want an underlying sublime, formal thing that captivates you without the literalness, and you'd be writing about it if it was that literal. So, however, at different times that I'm making it, I'm engaging with questions of history and European history and European dominance and European patriarchy, just to throw out I know it sounds like a cliche politically, but you can't help it. It's just there. It's in the tapestry, and so I kind of got a kick out of burning the King of Clubs, and I felt a lot of different levels of things going on that I didn't. I didn't want the literalness to take over, but as I was engaging with it, I felt different elements. And have I run out of things to say?
I like the mystery in this work. I mean, I love the very subtle painterly kind of intervention of the light that's coming down in the middle, and obviously there's a really complicated relationship between that light and then the light of the moon. Was that something that, given the kind of pastoral element of the tapestry itself, was that sort of how you started with the composition, or did the composition start elsewhere?
I think the composition really started with the cards for me, because I think of like, what is a fun pop? I mean, I was apologizing for my process, and I do apologize for it, but I also feel like I want that industrial pop that I could never achieve if I was doing an artisanal look, an artisanal process. So I'm really pleased with the computerized element. That's my look. But I start with that. Like, I love a card, or I love a flat surface that surprises on this very nuanced, deep field of the tapestry, and so I kind of start with the fun of that contrast, and then I think that the cards and the moon kind of started around the same time, and I did want two sources of light, and to not locate it in a rational space, of course, and so I think the two sources of light was part of that for me, and yeah. Thank you for asking.
So talk to us a little bit about writing. Everybody who
Yeah.
has seen your piece is very intrigued by the writing.
Yeah.
Why don't you point it out?
Yeah.
everyone-
Okay. So there's some writing down here and then up here, and I did a hashtag, and it was just a hashtag, and it says, "You know it, and I know it too," and it was kind of like a little bit of the historical thing, like, you know what's coming. Time for Europe to take a break. And I mean, not, that sounds terrible, Europe, but I mean what's the word? Monarchy. Thank you. So yeah.
It's hard to behead monarchies these days. It's
Yeah.
not a good look in the press.
Yeah. But as I was doing it, so I was having this like playful thing with a European feeling, European guilt, I guess, because that's my descent, my whatever, antecedents. But also I was, and I don't know if this is an answer to your question because I just forgot your question, but but I think that so I'm sort of going, bouncing off of that element of history, but then returning to a super personal, like sentimental thing. Like, I like to push into sentimental because I know it's verboten in a mature career, but I want to see if I can push into it and legitimize it for myself, and so most of the time it was like a sliver of the time on the political thing, and then most of the time I'm like, you want to do that swan dive into sentiment, just do it, and then I'm trying to have a conversation with sentiment in a pool of, sentiment is uncool, and sentimental, is uncool, and it's good for good reason, but I still want to play with it. And so most of the time I'm just feeling like this outpouring of like meditative, like a little bit of bliss and a little bit of excitement in, that kind of religious, almost sentimental feeling. And
that edge of discomfort with sentimentality is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because if we think about tapestries and the fact that, we think of them a lot in the 18th century, and the kind of outpouring of public emotion by people who were in this very structured society is interesting. I mean, people are always crying in the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
In letters, they always were, moved to tears by art. So
Right.
I'd like to know if that very interesting play with sentimentality. If that comes out more in this work, your work with tapestry, and perhaps less in other mediums, or is it a constant in your work?
Good question. I think it's a constant, but this piece, I was really sentimental about it. Like, you know, gold thread and rays of light, and I had to dial myself back from telling the viewer what to feel, which is one of the really bad things about sentimentality, is that you end up with very broad feeling that you're almost instructing people to feel, and I was like, stop, you know, I have to stop myself, but I think that that's a constant thing for me. But it really, with tapestries, I'm a little more free, because the tapestry starts out so sentimental. So sometimes I do a little bit of a pop, like a cartoon pop off of it, to make fun of the sentiment and to, you know, dial it back. But I'm really enjoying the sentiment of the tapestry, you know, just. Robbie, you later. Robbie, you're second, all right?
I love that you're talking about sentiment. I think it's fantastic. I'm so glad that somebody in this, I mean, I think many artists nowadays want to be sentimental. They want to be romantic. And then there's this thing of you shouldn't, you know. But I like the way, even though you sort of you feel like you've stopped yourself, it's still a very romantic piece. And I applaud you for even it's sort of like a elephant in the room sometimes with artists that has to be very intellectual and it has to be this and that. But I love the religious aspect of it. It's great.
Yeah, that's why I like the romantic era. Like,
yes,
if I can find kids' illustrations from the romantic kids' books illustrations from the romantic era, I just glom onto that. Like in my painting, maybe not so much here, but that's like the romantic era was the era of sentiment. You know, I mean, or maybe more of the, but so I totally get off on that too. It's bad taste, but it's the best. Robbie.
I just want to make a sideways comment. There's a very strong narrative in this. I mean, if you're not aware of it, you're like a Jungian dream or something. But you know, the story of the rabbit and the moon is universal out of Asia and through indigenous people. It's the same story of the rabbit. So there is a really strong religious undercurrent here. The story is really, if you don't know it, I mean, I could tell it briefly, but I'll try to tell it. That rabbit, fox, can be wolf, are traveling, they meet a beggar on the road, they each offer the beggar something, the rabbit has nothing to offer, sacrifices itself to the fire. The beggar turns out to be a god, and they transcend. So that is why a lot of, you know...
That's so good.
There you go.
Robbie, thanks for not telling me that earlier. All right.
You know, it's like, I just see you as like in third grade having to get up in front of the class. Anyway, sorry.
Hello, and thank you very much for your work. And something that has come up is this idea of emotions and things like that. But so Zita Gudino and I are curating an exhibition in New York, down in Tribeca, called Wet Conceptualism. Versus dry conceptualism. So dry conceptualism, as we all know, was a movement in artwork, in the art history in which the artwork was drained of all its emotionality. Where the artwork was drained of its emotional quality, it was a reaction to a burgeoning art market. It was about immaterial objects, right? But we have, since 1980, we have moved out of Fordism and post-Fordism into cognitive capitalism, and I won't get into that, but I will say that labor became immaterial, and when immaterial labor transpired and moved away from immaterial objects, women's work, Silvia Federici talked about effective labor, caring labor, women's work, and this became a very important part of a new kind of idea of immateriality. And in the concept, we have this idea of wet conceptualism. Wet conceptualism is about the interplay of ideas, but it's now about emotions and feeling. It's very much different in terms of a lot of women and people of color were not on purpose and not in a negative way, were excluded from the earlier conceptual art. There were a couple of people who were involved, but mostly were not. And, Carolee Schneemann and people like Yoko Ono and all those guys were still doing conceptual art, but they weren't part of the conceptual art project. So we're curating a show beginning in October, here, so Zita and I, in New York, down in Walker Street, is that the address? Walker Street, and I'd love you to come and find out about wet conceptualism.
Sounds cool.
So I'm going to ask something way more mundane, or I'm going to ask something anyway. I mean, I'm looking at elements of magic in this picture, but they're completely transformed. It's such a cool thing that the cards, there's only 2 cards. I don't think you can do I should ask Alan Kronzek this. I'm sure he'd know if you can do a magic trick with 2 cards, but it's like bits and pieces of magic and elements of magic, and in a really disguised way, which I just love so much. And the playing card on fire happens to have rays coming out of it because of the tapestry behind it. And then there's that, I guess that's a ray of light in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a shooting star tail or something.
Yeah, it's a little primitive version of one. Yeah, that was like a ray of light.
But were you like thinking about magic?
Yeah, I mean, I love
I think you're always thinking about magic, basically.
Yeah, hoping for it. And I think that that cards are super fun that way, and rabbits are fun that way. And
But this is like
Yeah.
if the rabbits and the cards from magic were transposed into their natural environment,
Yeah.
you've made their natural environment for them when they're actually...
If I found them in the forest of the tapestry.
Yeah.
Yes.
It makes me
Yeah.
go like all magic about the elements in it in my head rather than
I do
in
that
their
as I'm doing
usefulness.
it. Totally.
That's
I mean,
magic.
that's part of it is like, I'm in the forest. What am I going to find? And it's totally part of that.
We're in the forest too. I think it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, I love your work. The thing that I love about this piece is that it's about climate and the fires in Yellowstone or wherever, and it's not like you're not pushing that in somebody's face. It's not a literal depiction of climate change and where fires start and the animals that get destroyed. But the whole thing about how you do a flipping of the cards, when the ace and the king are the 2 highest cards, but they're not the same. They're not in the same suit. And the rabbit is already kind of gone. You've already excluded him, except for this, this leftover, image of what the rabbit was, So when you say you're dealing in a religious way, I see this as like the aftermath of climate change. What happens after we have left the moon and and the cards certainly wouldn't be there, but what's in the cards for us as a people is will always be in our minds. I think this is beautiful because of that brown background and the ashen kind of look. It's not really what you could say is a beautifully made tapestry. I mean, would you really buy that tapestry? You know? No, I mean, before
Yeah.
these things were added,
Yeah.
would you actually buy it? But I love the piece, I love your work, and thank you.
You know what's so funny is I wasn't thinking about climate change, but what you want to believe in is you're creating something. I always do think about climate change anyways, and you want to believe that as you're doing work that the magic is that your subconscious or your intuitive self is able to create something even while you're not consciously thinking of it, or you're trying to, you're hoping that all the elements that you think about during the day will come through without the planned program for that. And so I'm taking it. I'm just going to run with that.
I was just going to ask real quick, I love the cutout because it leaves the bunny there but lets it go somewhere else. So do your cutouts end up in other art?
No, because it's I'm so messy about it. But there are some cutouts that if I was really good at it would be fun to do that with. And thanks for the idea. Yeah. Bunnies in the garbage. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah, right, yeah.
Was it in any way, is it a reference to Alice in Wonderland as well?
Yeah, I mean,
the cards,
I definitely thought of Alice in Wonderland. In fact, I thought, oh, cards and bunnies, Alice in Wonderland, so obvious. But I think that's part of the fun. It's unavoidable, and you get a chance to celebrate these little things that you've experienced over time with cards and bunnies, and that wouldn't be fun if you couldn't, you know. So.
First of all, I think it's great that we can have half an hour conversation of everyone's interpretation of artist's work.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible, because for me it's also interpretation, a modern version of very religious painting. When you look into Christianity, the hell, there's a king burning in the middle, a rabbit is successful on the left, and the moon, the background is really like a fire, all the Judgment Days paintings in the churches in Europe are exactly this, but in a more, figurative way.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely reaching for like that beatific, stretch up into the corner, like there's in so many Catholic paintings, and beatific colors, and I can't help but reflect on Catholic painting. It's the basis of, it's 80% of my experience of history of painting, Catholic painting. And I love it, Rabbit is a survivor. She's not going to go. She is not going to hell.
Lucy, I have a question, a quote, and a observation, and I'll do them in reverse order. Observation is in regards to sentimentality. This show has, I wouldn't say quite half the work in it deals with that in very sort of explicit and interesting ways. I don't know if that's the nature of the craft aspect of the making that allows for turns out I have more than one question, but whether that, sort of engenders a sort of sentimental response that's coupled with content. But in regards to sentimentality, I fall on the Paul Simon side of the definition of sentimentality, which is, he says, sentimentality aims for the heart and misses. And but the question I actually want you to answer, you said that you do this as a computer program that you send out to be embroidered. Can you actually go through how you make the computer thing that you send out? Do you do it all in like Photoshop or?
So I have this one place in the fashion district that's really crazy and lovely people working there, and I show up with the piece, obviously, and then I have two pieces of paper. One is the to scale form placed on the tapestry, and then I have with the drawing that they're going to follow, and then I do color separation for the different threads that I'm going to choose them to put in.
Is the drawing hand-drawn, or the drawing
Hand-drawn.
is photographed and
It's
manipulated? And
if I could photograph it, that would be the best, because then I get that really good pop. But most of the time I have to hand draw it, and so I'll hand draw the whole thing, and then I do a second one that is the same thing, which I try to copy off of the first one because I want it to be pretty exact, and I do color separation there, which they need for the computer, for the program.
Elaborate.
Yeah.
No.
Hard work.
Yes, Lucy,
Hi,
right?
yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm curious about the title of this piece. I did come to this show, but I keep having a million of them, like question for Fragonard, or when I look at this kind of Rococo stuff going on, it's really an intriguing tapestry, especially because of the way you've juxtaposed it with your contemporary work. But what is the title of the piece?
The title of the piece is Bunny Moon, or what? Was it Rabbit Moon? Thank you, Rabbit Moon. Okay,
Rabbit
that's
Moon.
bad.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Rabbit Moon.
Well,
Yeah.
because it seems to be about a question, and I must say I really love as someone who is, I am religious, for sure, and interested in all the religions as an interfaith minister, but I stay with one source. So I really appreciate your daring into those places where, especially I feel in the contemporary art world, you almost get immediately, branded as something. Religious paintings have. Religion is a theology is like one of the most interesting things in the world to study, along with science and everything else. But I really do appreciate your tackling those tough questions, and your piece is really intriguing. Is that your signature, the line and the...
Oh, the line. No, that was just like a little abstract moment.
Yeah.
I felt I needed something formally. And you know what? I got to say, formal choices, even though it ends up sounding like design, but the formal choices are this level that I definitely believe in. So, I tossed that in there.
Perhaps one more question?
All right, you're out.
Well, so we'd like to invite you, if you have time, to continue this conversation downstairs, because Christa brought us cookies.
Oh.
So the show will be opening up here, but I hope Lucy and Christa will go downstairs, and if you have any informal questions you'd like to ask, please do join them downstairs. Thank you very much.